Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now this is going to be a bit of a rambly video. I talked about this a little bit on the monthly newsletter that I do. If you don't know, I run a Facebook book club with my best friend Daisy. It's called the Daisy and B Book Club. We run that over on Facebook. If you're interested, I'll leave the link for it down below if you'd like to join. We do monthly themes as opposed to having a set book to read each month, which we find is a lot more inclusive, more people can join in. And then also at the end of every month, people have got so many different books to talk about and recommend that we just become kind of like a plethora of book recommendations. It's fantastic, and it's so lovely to see people reading such different books that still interpret the theme, if that makes sense. So interesting to see all the different interpretations. We also do a monthly newsletter, bookish newsletter, sorry, I've got a text. And I talked about this a little bit in spoilers for my column for the March newsletter. So I probably should try and put this up after then. But I just wanted to talk about some of sort of like my reading tastes and some sort of like habits that I've had across the years. Now, just like with anything, as you grow and you develop and you change and whatnot and you live, a lot of your, or especially for me, a lot of, in every sort of walk of life, habits change, things change. You know, at a different point in your life, when you're young and at college and you're working on a Saturday, you know, the way you spend your free time may well be different to the way as a 27-year-old I choose to spend my free time. And I feel like depending on what point of life you're at, I feel like my reading tastes have very much reflected in that as well. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about some of the sort of guilt I have around reading certain books and how I'm trying to overcome that. And I'm trying to work really hard on this year in 2022 reading what I want to read and not reading what I feel like I have to read. So let's backtrack a little bit to when I kind of really got back into reading. And I say when I really got back into reading, I kind of mean around, I wonder when it was. It was probably around 2018, 2019. Let's get the good old Goodreads up and let's see when I started actually properly tracking my reading on Goodreads, because this will be a good indication. So, okay. 2017, and then 2018 was the first year and only year that I read 100 books. So yeah, how old was I in 2017? How old was I in 2017? Let's do the maths, because I can't think that quickly. 23. So yeah, I was 23, 2017, and I really hadn't been doing a lot of reading. I had been doing some, but 2017 was like kind of when I discovered Goodreads and started really seriously reading. And then 2018 went full ham and read 101 books. I kind of feel like it's a true reflection of when I stopped doing a sales job. So I worked in car sales for several years. I worked in the car sales environment, directly selling for several years. And I feel like at that point in 2017, I'd come out of working 4 days during the week, a day at the weekend, potentially 2 days at the weekend, to come away from that. And I'd started a 9 to 5 admin job in car sales. So I went from being front of house car sales and not really enjoying it, doing okay, but not doing amazing, and being, I'd say I was okay at it. I was quite good at it, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the environment. And I decided to take a bit of a change and go more back rather than front of house to the admin side of things. And that gave me back my weekends. It gave me back some time in the evenings. And I feel like that is a reflection when I actually had the headspace to kind of get back into reading. I seem to remember, I think I always carried a book in my handbag when I was in car sales, but I don't think I really read that much and that frequently. And I really think it's a true reflection of, at that point in my life, I went from a job that was really, really intense to a job that wasn't quite so intense and was Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, 8:30 to 5:30. And it was really a reflection of my kind of lifestyle changing, my daily life changing, having that time back at the weekends, and my brain not working quite as hard as it was. And alongside that, when I first kind of got back into reading, I was reading a lot of World War II fiction and I was reading a lot of contemporary romance. And then I discovered these books that everyone was talking about on BookTube, like A Court of Thorns and Roses, Throne of Glass, that I didn't think I would enjoy because they were like more fantasy, YA fantasy. I didn't think I'd enjoy them. And then I actually picked up A Court of Thorns and Roses and I loved it. My PC's just switched off, sorry if that noise is annoying you. And I really enjoyed it. And I really see A Court of Thorns and Roses as a pivotal point in my sort of like reading history of opening my eyes up to there is so much more than just reading contemporary and contemporary romance and World War II fiction. There is so much more than that, and you will and you can enjoy fantasy settings, fantasy books. And I feel like A Court of Thorns and Roses was a really accessible book to start with and get me back into it, because it wasn't the hardest book to read. It wasn't the most in-depth, like real deep fantasy book, but it was just enough that it was like, oh my gosh, actually it piqued my interest enough that I was like, oh my gosh, I really like this. I really like the world building and this new world that's being created. And don't get me wrong, I've read Harry Potter. I know Harry Potter is a really area at the moment to discuss, but I'd read that. I've read The Hunger Games. I've read the Ugly series. I read Cinder. So I've dabbled in like sort of dystopia and fantasy, but mainly dystopia really, as I was growing up as a teenager. So when I was 23, I read ACOTAR as quite a, like, I was in my 20s and I read ACOTAR. Still am in my 20s, but I was like, you know, I was in my mid-20s really when I really read ACOTAR and really enjoyed it. But like I say, I felt like it really opened my eyes up to what I could read, and that I could enjoy other types of books. It didn't just have to be, like I say, contemporary fiction, contemporary romance, and then the odd World War II fiction here and there. So somewhere along the line between then and now, for some reason, I've kind of put a kind of guilt or a kind of, I don't know why, I've got this sense that reading a contemporary romance now is like a bit of a cheat. It's not a proper book, it's a guilty pleasure. And I think even having the kind of idea that certain types of books are guilty pleasures rather than I read this book and I really enjoyed it, I think even thinking that, like, oh, it's a guilty pleasure, and having that kind of like in the back of your mind that you shouldn't be enjoying reading it, and it's something that I'm really working on this year, because I've definitely fallen into the trap of, I feel like I should read this book because it's really hyped, everyone's reading it, everyone's really enjoying it, so I should read it, and then not massively enjoying it. What kind of springs to mind when I think of this? Beth O'Leary. I love The Flat Share, love The Flat Share, but I kind of like willed myself to love The Switch by the same author so much that actually at the time I probably would have told you I loved it and it was the best book ever, but on reflection I didn't actually enjoy it as much as The Flat Share. And then I read The Road Trip when that was released and didn't gel with that at all, but was like compelled to finish it and read it because I felt like I had to. And there are lots of other authors and other books that I could use to describe that as well. But I've kind of had this like shift. Maybe it's like I've matured as a reader, and I've had this sort of like shift into, actually, any book that I read, if I enjoy it, it was worth me reading it. And it doesn't matter, I shouldn't feel guilty if it's a contemporary romance. If everyone else is reading fantasy, that's up to them. Or if it's a YA, or if it's by an author that maybe is a bit smutty and you kind of feel like, oh, I shouldn't be telling everybody that I read the latest 50 Shades of Grey book that was released. I don't know, it's just like this weird feeling that I've had for years now that, oh, you shouldn't admit to reading and enjoying these because they're seen as lesser books. And I don't think they even are necessarily seen as lesser books. But when I was reading a lot of really in-depth historical fiction, I was reading Outlander, and then I was reading Poldark. Outlander's up there, Poldark's there, and then I was also reading the Into the Wilderness series by Sara Donati, which is kind of like compared to Outlander. I actually found the reading the odd contemporary in between really refreshing, because I felt like my brain just needed the break from something that was so in-depth and so intense that I actually really enjoyed it. And I think what I'm kind of going to aim for 2022 is just reading across the genres that I enjoy, because if I read too many historical fictions back to back to back to back to back, I don't enjoy them as much, because I haven't got the kind of a differing genre to kind of compare it to, and I don't find them as refreshing or as enjoyable because I've read so much historical fiction. Just like if I only read contemporary fiction, I'd get bored. And if I only read fantasy, I'd get burnt out on reading fantasy. But what I've been enjoying for the last few months is reading a real mix each month. So I have read, so far in February, I've read a contemporary romance. I've read a contemporary murder mystery, and I've also been reading a new adult urban fantasy. And I think having that mix now, and not just focusing on one type of genre and having to read all these books now because they're, you know, and don't get me wrong, enjoy everything that I had read when I was reading back to back to back genres. I just feel like I'm enjoying everything so much more now because everything's contrasting better. It's such a nicer contrast going into reading A House of Sky and Breath after reading Meet Me in London. I've got Meet Me in Hawaii in front of me, and having read The Man Who Died Twice, I kind of feel like it's so much more genre diverse, and I'm just enjoying that contrast more and being able to appreciate everything that I'm reading much more, and how they're different reads and how they affect me differently. If I was to read a really, really sad book, I'd want something that was light, fluffy, and afterwards to kind of pick me back up. And I feel like as a person, I feel like I'm getting better at choosing more diversely across the genres and enjoying what I'm reading for what I'm reading. Being a person that runs a book club, you kind of feel a pressure of reading certain books and reading certain types of books. And I feel like by taking that pressure off and by reading across more genres more diversely, I'm enjoying reading so much more, but I'm still reading the same books. I'm just reading them in a different way. Does that make sense? I feel like this whole video is just like verbal diarrhea. Sorry if you don't like that word. About reading, but I just feel like it's really important to kind of read what you want to read. I haven't DNF'd anything yet this year, and I don't know if I will, because I still find DNFing really difficult, but I am definitely thinking more about the types of books that I'm reading and making sure that I'm getting that balance. And I think that's probably quite a good reflection as well with my general life. I'm trying to really work on a balance at the moment as well in my life. So getting that work life chore, you know, doing the chores around the house, but also having enough downtime. I'm really working on that as well for me. Like, so I know that's not reading related, but I feel like that's a really good reflection on that. I'm trying for balance in other areas of my life. So my reading's also kind of changed. And I think it's so interesting to look at my TBR shelves here. And my TBR has become overwhelmed with historical fiction and fantasy, basically. And what's been really, really lovely in the last couple of months is actually buying some contemporary romance and some contemporary books, because I just would look at my shelves and there wouldn't be an awful lot of contemporary. So then, because there's not a lot of contemporary, you tend not to pick it up because it's mostly, you know, and the contemporaries that I were picking up were because it was a auto by author, like Lindsay Kelk's got a new book release, so I buy that and I read that, rather than actually just having a range of contemporaries on my shelf to read. And it's just been really refreshing. It's been really lovely, really refreshing. And I feel like I'm trying stuff that I wouldn't have tried necessarily before, picking up stuff that I wouldn't necessarily have picked up before, stuff that I feel would just sort of sat on my TBR for years and never been touched. But I do feel like I need to do a TBR video, and I don't know if you'd be interested in me doing this, but I do feel like I need to do a declutter on my TBR. I need to make some real tough decisions about whether some stuff needs to go. It's been on my TBR for years. So if you are interested in me doing a TBR video to kind of talk about through some of the books, where I got them from, why I've got them, and kind of all the thoughts behind that, and then decluttering at the same time. Would you be interested in that? Let me know. I know Daisy wants me to do a video like that, but yeah, so I hope this video kind of, I know this is probably just a bit of a weird video, but I kind of felt like I had to sit down and talk about it because, like I say, it's been really important for me these last couple of months, seeing my focus shift with my reading, and how taking that pressure away has meant that actually I've been reading more. The last kind of like 2021 was a really busy year for me in my personal life. Yeah, at the beginning of the year I was reading loads, and then I feel like I can see sort of like when my reading sort of like waned and my interest in reading sort of waned. And it's really interesting looking back through like my statistics and seeing that. And I think it was because I was putting so much pressure on myself to read specific books and felt like I had to read specific books. So I'm really glad that I've kind of had this epiphany, and that in doing kind of initial trial, actually I really enjoyed it, and I've proven to myself that I don't need to feel guilty about picking up a book like this. I don't need to feel like this is any less of a book than, that's not a very good example, than this, because they're so different. You can't compare them. They're so different, and they have different reasons. I pick them up for different reasons. This to get completely lost in a world that is just absolutely amazing, and this to get some sort of fluffy cleansing, almost like a palette cleanser, just something that's really lighthearted, really easy to read, but still kind of like keeps you interested. They're different, and I feel like they can't be compared, which is why it's so nice to be reading and contrasting between the books that I've got on the go. Anyway, like I say, I've picked up some books recently which are more contemporary romance, and I'm planning on doing, I've got a few books that are on order and I'm waiting to arrive at the minute. Not many, but I did pick up a couple of books as a treat. So once I have got those books all come in, I think I might do a book haul. I don't buy many books, I don't receive many books apart from at Christmas and maybe at my birthday. So I think it'll be really fun, and the odd pre-order as well. So I think it'll be really fun to sit down and do a book haul as well when more of those books have arrived and I've got them here to show you. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this kind of actually made sense. If I watch this back and it doesn't, I just won't post it. But I just think it's really interesting seeing how my reading has changed over the years, over the last 10 years, how much my reading has changed, and my taste in reading has changed, but also kind of like gone almost back full circle. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear about your thoughts as well on, you know, do you feel some pressure to read certain books, and do you feel guilty for reading other books? I'd love to hear about what your thoughts are, because like I say, I think we really need to as a community knock this kind of like feeling guilty about reading a book and a book being a lesser book, or oh no, don't admit that you've read the latest 50 Shades of Grey book, because because I know not every book that we read are the best books that have ever been written, but they have their own merit in their own ways. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you didn't think it was just a complete rambly bumbling on about God knows what, but I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!